All right, everyone, let's get started with this session on will credit card linkage to UPI lead to a rise in acceptability by merchants? This is being moderated by Dewang Neralla, CEO Entity Data Payment Services India, and our panel for this session are Ajay Singh, Senior Vice President Paytm, Rohit Lad, Director Vriddhi Software Solutions, Denny Thomas, Head of RuPay, National Payments Corporation of India, Bhargavi Sridharan, Head of E-Commerce Ecosystem at ICICI Bank, and Pramod Mulani, Vice President, Cards Strategy, Juspay. Let's welcome them with a round of applause, everyone. Let's have a round of applause for all our speakers. And over to you.
Good afternoon. I think we got delayed by about 30 minutes, but nevertheless, great to see a great crowd here. Before I begin, I think UPI has been kind of a revolution for the last 2.5 years, 3 years. More than 3 years, we've seen transactions just literally going up in terms of a different kind of a curve out there. When we see UPI, and then that's when a few months back, RBI came down and gave an announcement that there would be RuPay cards which could be linked, credit card which could be linked on UPI, and that was met with a lot of I think happiness as well as basically surprised by a lot of people. And here we have a great panel, so I will not take too much of the time here. So I think it's one of the hottest topics out here. Today evening we have a launch of credit card linkage on UPI happening today evening right here at the Geo World Drive happening. So I think that's going to be a very I think a different moment out here from an NPCI. So we have a great panel. So I'll start out before anything else with Denny. Denny comes from NPCI and from the hub of things. I think, Denny, my first question to you is basically when UPI is the baby of NPCI, right? Now, when you look at credit card linkage on UPI, basically, what is the thought process behind it? And one of the other key questions, because NPCI is going to be creating the system around for the entire industry out there. Everybody is going to be plugging into your rails. How do you see the customer experience or user experience panning out? So over to you.
I'm sure that all of us here are pretty much interested kind of on the actual go live of UPI CC, right? But all the more people would be interested what was the genesis of this entire thought process, right? So obviously it was a step-by-step approach, and just to kind of give you some interesting background, if you look at the evolution of the debit card in the country, right? So from 2015 to 2022, debit card overall, if you look at it from a card info perspective, it has just grown 1.6 times. When you look at the spends, it is almost around 6 times it has grown. But the moment you add UPI to it, that's where the magic is. It's almost 23 times, right? And that's what UPI has done. And although everyone consider UPI as a tipping point for the payments ecosystem in the country, people don't understand the platform and the ecosystem that was built up primarily to kind of enable this, right? And what UPI has also done is that it has taken this power from say a issuer or an acquirer to actually to the customers, okay? And that's has been the core element of UPI. The customer decides, and the overall ecosystem that got evolved, okay? NPCI has been always coming out with products, and I think with UPI, that was the first time that we looked at as a platform, okay? And this platform was actually agnostic to what was the end product which would be get linked to the UPI platform. So we started off with the CASA account. Then 2018, when this growth really kind of propelled, there was a huge demand from the market. And as I said, customers were demanding a credit-linked product on UPI. And that's where in 2018, we got the approval for launching the OD product, right? And that's how the first step towards credit kind of took up. And today, when RBI has allowed to start off this with RuPay cards, it has again given back the power to the customers, right? And the whole objective of this entire UPI linkage is not only kind of enabling the acceptance points, right? So the figure that I mentioned, that in spite of the SIF growing by 1.6, the spends grew by 23 times. That was predominantly because of the deployment of QR codes. And if you look at the POS terminals that are there today, the number of POS terminals, it is close to around 6.7 million. And the number of QR codes that are there, it is like above 100 million. But even if I consider unique merchants, it will be fairly around in the range of 60 to 70 million merchants. And that's the reach. And that's where the power will come in. And as I said, the power has now gone back to the customers. So customers would do the linking of the credit card into the UPI platform. There will be multiple use cases which would come up, basis the customer's demand, basis the customer preferences. And I'm sure this overall ecosystem is going to be rocking in a couple of years.
Awesome. I think there's still one question unanswered, but I'll come back to you again. I think I'll over to you, Bhargavi. I think from a bank perspective, so Bhargavi comes from a very interesting, she's the head of e-com at ICICI Bank, as we know. I think from her perspective, as a bank, it's one of the leading banks in the country, and they're driving a lot of commerce on the merchant side. So my question to you, Bhargavi, is when you look at merchants, so two questions rather. So one is on the merchant side. How do you see the experience because of credit card linkage on basically the UPI? Because one of the session key things is it going to increase in the number of merchant signups and everything else? So that's my first question. Do you foresee that sort of a thing happening? How do you see that behavior changing? And my second question is basically in terms of issuance. So would you see, as a result of this, would the issuance technologies be a lot different and a lot more disruption happening on the issuance side? Because instead of giving a physical card, you can actually basically give a virtual card which could be linked on UPI and basically can be immediately put on the rails of that. So just over to you, Bhargavi.
Thanks, Dewang. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Bhargavi. I look at the e-commerce ecosystem at ICICI Bank and the API banking, and also work for the digitization of our MSME and business banking customers. So undoubtedly, UPI on credit cards, or credit cards on UPI, should I say, is transformative. It's an asset-light model for all our merchants, right? So no POS machine, then no junjat of rule for, all of the infrastructure costs associated, as small as it may be, those daily niggles and frictions of running your POS machine. So certainly transformative. It allows every merchant to now accept credit cards if they so will choose to opt in, I'm sure, into this. So yes, we see that it's a great thing for merchants. Key aspects that we all should be looking at, and I think when we thought of this topic, and as you said, it's very hot, and I think today this topic has more questions than answers. And the interesting thing is there is this principle, right? By observing something and by participating in something, you change the nature of it. I think that's certainly going to happen here. So the key unanswered questions that will drive adoption and the immense success is the commercials. What should it be? Highly debated and very much WIP. What will happen to Bharat QR? What will happen to the POS machine in not months, but maybe in the years to come? So these are all challenges that we in operating businesses continue to, we continue to do BAU, then we continue to think of what are these long-term impacts. NPCI just launches magic out of the box. And so this is it. And when we talk about cards, it's today an established, on the issuing side especially, it's an established commercial model. And customers also have expectations on rewards. Customers have expectations on credit periods, and there is a cost of credit. So these are things that the commercial model that comes up will certainly have to take into account. And also, will the ticket sizes go up? Will the average spends on the card go up? I think one of my colleagues here mentioned that the total number of spends, amount of spends will certainly go up. The average ticket size may well drop. Now, are the card switches equipped technology-wise to cope with the sort of transactions that UPI is capable of delivering? Right, the scale suddenly sort of goes up exponentially. So that is something that we have to, while merchants may accept it, we need to ensure that at the background we deliver that experience to them. So we are quite keenly watching this space, quite keenly participating, working with all stakeholders here to make that happen. You also had another question on will it change, I think, improve the issuance?
Improve the issuance.
Yeah, so I think that is anyway already happening by many of the fintechs. They're using surrogate markers to increase the credit base and neatly delivering that UPI on OD has been there. It also has an MDR. But UPI on credit will certainly have a huge offtake because there are so many players separately working on bringing many folks into the inclusion, credit inclusion. So certainly I think it will scale up further.
Great. I think I'll come back to you on a follow-up question there. Rohit, on to you. You are one of the leading. So Rohit comes from Vriddhi Software, and they are one of the largest solution providers for education institutions. I think you can give a further intro about yourself. But my question to you is, from an ecosystem of education, because you handle a lot of rural traffic, you handle a lot of rural students, how do you see these things panning out? Because from an experiential point of view, you have UPI, now you have credit card on UPI. So that's two different levels you are getting into. How would you look at the experience of your institutions as well as the customers? Because I'm sure there are a lot of challenges which your institutions are facing out there, even in terms of basically, say for example, pure play digital payment itself. So over to you, Rohit.
Awesome. So thank you for that. I'm Rohit Lad. So I'm the director of Vriddhi Software Solutions. So we have been the ERP player in the education sector for the past 20 years or so, something like that. I'm not sure. So it's been a long journey. And we started basically off from a strictly offline and how the old kinds of inventory management system used to work. So we started off like that, and as the time changed, some of our customers, like some of the big colleges around in Maharashtra, they started demanding an online solution to our services. So the natural course of action was to give them an online solution, but since they are educational institutes, finance is a very big matter for them. So collecting fees from the students and making sure the success rate of those transactions that is high enough so that it won't drive away traffic from their particular institution to another institution who might not have an online solution was a big challenge for us. So in the early days, as you mentioned, like UPI was new, there were very few customers or merchants willing to go on the UPI system just because there was this orthodox way of thinking in the education sector specifically that online means there is a 99% chance that it's going to be a fraudulent activity. So that was a very big challenge for us. So the best way we address that is like we forced some of our clients to and we over the course of almost 3 to 4 years, we basically hammered them in telling and basically saying them ki if you go online, there are these benefits. So the accounting part will be easier on your end because the number of students and traffic they handle is very huge and not a single person can handle those. So UPI obviously helped driving this, as Denny mentioned, that the QR codes are way higher than the POS systems in the market. So that particular part, like easily obtaining the QR code for their college account, bank accounts, and the students, specifically new students, the students tend to be techno savvy than their parents or any other older generation. So they kind of chose and they rode the wave of the UPI QR code and that revolution. So demonetization helped in that perspective a lot. And secondly, COVID, if there's a bright side to the COVID, it helped drive the traffic towards UPI. So it was a really challenging, especially in the rural area, as you mentioned. People are not willing to go online yet due to lack of infrastructure mainly. Because as from our internal analysis, particularly in rural areas than urban areas, the success to failure ratio for UPI transaction is very much 3 to 4 times higher than in an urban setting like Mumbai or Pune, some cities like that. So that drives a challenge. We have, actually I'd like to mention a case we had previous year. So this one particular client user was trying to make a very substantial amount of payment to the college. And they tried, in a 24-hour period, they almost made 351 transactions. 351 attempts using UPI. And we ultimately had to call them and ask them, hey, what are you doing exactly? What's the issue? I thought like there was some issue with gateway or some bank servers or something like that. But it turned out that they recently activated UPI and there's a cooldown time for UPI. Yes. They were not aware of that. So drive the UPI acceptance for merchants, I believe the key point is going to be educating the merchants and the end users. It's not going to be linkage of credit cards or linkage of any other different types of payment methods, but it's going to be the knowledge that UPI, how it works, what are the benefits, and if the credit card linkage happened, what more benefits they will happen. As Bhargavi mentioned, there is a part of MDR also, so that's a whole another topic. That's a big rabbit hole to go down. So I'm not going to go into that, but yeah, that's a very big challenge. But credit card linkage will definitely help, but I believe the way to go is educating people.
Great. Thanks,
honestly.
Rohit. I think I'll come back to you again. Ajay, over to you. I think you handle one of the largest consumer ecosystems. So by the way, Ajay is from Paytm. He comes with a long background from Citibank. So you can give an introduction about yourself. But my question to you is, when you look at more than about, I don't know, it's about 200 million plus customers on Paytm. And with that, because the kind of questions which I think issues which Rohit had led was basically on the rural side, A, knowledge, B, basically in terms of connectivity issues and everything else. So one, from your side, where do you see that panning out when you look at something like credit card on this happening? Because credit card linkage, first is UPI, because you've been one of the most pioneering apps out there in the market out there. So where do you see that helping basically, and how does that rural experience change with the credit card? And second is, would you see new use cases emerging out of credit card linkages on UPI? Because along with basically today, for example, every merchant on, let's say for example, you have this hawkers and everybody else, everybody says Paytm karo. Now would that basically change and somebody say Paytm pe credit karo kind of a thing?
Yeah, thanks Dewang. Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Ajay. I'm with Paytm and I manage our credit card and merchant lending businesses. Professionally, I've spent a large part of my professional career with Citi, as Dewang mentioned. So Dewang, coming to the points you raised. Firstly, if you just look at the journey, the way UPI has transformed, and some of us were chatting earlier, just about 5 years, right? UPI is today 10x of what credit card spends are. And one of the primary reasons for that, it is accepted at 10x plus merchants in the country, right? That is one side of the equation. The other relevant points which you raised, obviously there has to be supply of credit, right? Which is a parallel entire industry and ecosystem working towards that, right? A lot of folks in the audience are part of that. And UPI transactions and the e-commerce ecosystem in India, right? The way all of this is really transformed the way we all live our lives is a lot of ways encouraging that, enhancing that. Today, approximately, close to about 40 million merchants accept UPI payments, right, in India. And so it is all pervasive, right? So you will see, QR codes all across. As you said, Paytm Karo, and maybe somewhere in the future. I think whatever I've heard of all our colleagues and what we chatted, this will become equally big. It may take, that's for sure, it should become equally big. Yeah, a whole host of things have to be solved along the way. Now, it's for us to collectively see, right? And there is obviously an institutional support which will be required, right, from the government and everyone to come together. But clearly, there are two things which will happen. When RuPay cards initially get, linked onto UPI, and all the other networks we presume will follow suit, all existing card users will increase spends on cards, right? With a lot of parallel things happening, which most of us are aware, tokenization, right? Better acceptance technology, right? All will enable very easy, convenient usage of cards for all existing card users. Right? The second thing, as I spoke about, we'll have to ensure collectively, right, as an ecosystem, that a lot more folks get credit cards. You spoke about, rural India. Obviously, there is hardly or no credit available there. There are a lot of institutions, a lot of young companies who are working to solve some of those problems, right, along with established institutions. we have to solve that piece, right? But I think the first piece, the acceptance gets solved, and then we have to be collective. That will take things ahead, right? But definitely this is going to be transformative. None of us had imagined in 2016, right? When UPI, when we heard the term UPI and VPA, that it'll become so much a part of our daily lives, right? So hopefully sometime in the future, very soon, you will see, and hopefully we all will start saying Paytm Pay, credit card karo.
Chalo, good. I think that's a good line I've given you. You can give me the royalty for that if you don't mind. So over to you, Pramod. I think Pramod comes from Juspay. Juspay is more of an infrastructure provider for a quite lot of merchant set. Typically, a lot of mobile merchants to online merchants. Everybody use Juspay as a technology base out there. Now, my key question to you would be on technology itself. What sort of, like for example, we just spoke about credit card linkage, and one of the things which I was going to ask Denny was about which still is pending right now, about user experience. But from a technology challenges point of view, how do you see the implementation happening? Because we just have tokenization coming up. Let's say, for example, 30th September is the deadline for tokenization. So do you see how would this be from an implementation standpoint? How do you see this being implemented? And from a player point of view, for example, any other players, like for example, we are a player out there, Entity Data is a player out there, and so are the banks, everybody's a player out there. How do you see that changing? Because in terms of interfacing or trying to do things, how do you see that changing out? And what are the challenges do you see in research on the technology front?
Hey, thanks, Dewang. I guess all of us spoke about UPI and the transformative things it has done. One thing to note is India is leading the innovation pack on payments. And when you are the leader on innovation, obviously you're doing things which are very, very transformative. You're investing in new technology. The regulation is trying to protect the customer. So a lot of things are happening back to back. Now, what it means is that if you are the lead innovator, you will actually go through the process of implementing the technology and show the world that we can do it. And I think that's what UPI has done. As part of that process, obviously, there is a certain pain that one goes through when you implement newer technologies, because we have to be mindful that anything that is going to be different is going to take its own journey for evolution and scale. What is predominantly also, it has to be safe. Now, safe, secure, and scalable means that, you've got to make right kind of investments in technology. So I think, the credit card linkage on UPI will go through its own evolution and journey. I guess the rails already exist, which is the good part. I'm quite sure NPCI will ensure that it's not very disruptive from the way it's currently done. So to your first part of the question, I think, many of the merchants who understand and process UPI payments, and that's almost 100% of them, will not be doing too much of tech change as far as, trying to accept UPI. And obviously many players like Juspay and some of us on both bank merchant side and issuing side will ensure that the disruption is minimum. But I think what is going to happen, which is to be kept a note of, is that if it scales to the like of, where UPI is today, we have to make more investments to ensure that it is secure and scalable. I think that would mean more investments at the back end side of it than, the front end side of it, which is more around the customer experience side of it. So I think it's going to be a journey that we will undertake, all of us as an ecosystem, because it's different. It's the first time we're going to see a digital credit card, which is completely accepted at 40 to 60 million offline merchants and online merchants. So you don't have a physical plastic. It's a very different way of actually using a credit card. So I guess all of us will go through that journey of evolution and experience. It's transformative, so obviously, there will be some amount of pain. It's not going to be as straightforward. But I guess, as I said, that we will play a role to ensure minimum disruption.
Okay, I think thanks, Pramod. I think over to you, Denny. I think a couple of questions leading from what Pramod said. One was, would this use tokenization as a base for having the card linked to basically the UPI apps? And second is, again, my still questions on user experience remains out there.
So I'll answer the second question first, because I'm sorry I missed that in the first session. So as I said, the core principle of UPI is it gives power to the customer, right? And customer has always been at the center of any UX, any process or any innovation that we have done in UPI till date, and it continues to be. And that's one of the reasons why when this entire credit card linking process came in, there's already a journey, and as Pramod was saying, that we shouldn't disrupt what is already working, right, and what is already going. So we ensured that the process for a customer is as seamless as it is today when he is linking his savings account or a current account, right? So the process remains same. The difference is, instead of a savings account, here he is actually kind of linking a credit card. And not many customers know that there is a credit card account which gets opened at the issuer bank level, right? But that's never exposed or something. It's always the credit card number which is there. So we have taken care of that entire journey where customer friction is kind of minimum to zero, and the customer seamlessly gets kind of onboarded. And similarly, the integration for the banks, because here we are talking about an integration between a UPI switch and a credit card switch, right? So that's something we have also taken care of, and also the settlement part of it and the dispute part of it. Because finally, we are going to use the UPI railroads for the end-to-end journey. To take this forward, and this is something that obviously I didn't want to kind of go in detail because I don't want to act as a spoiler because the launch is today evening. So I request every one of you to kind of stay back for the launch where the RBI governor would be launching this product along with 2 other great products from NPCI shelves. So the second part is what would be the customer journey, right, when they're using a UPI. And as I said, we are looking at UPI as a platform, not as a product, right? And when you have this view, everything changes. So today, we are looking at how we can kind of facilitate an instant credit card issuance, right? What Pramod was mentioning. You can have actually a digital credit card on the fly available for the customer if someone wants to do it. Can we provide those APIs? Can we kind of give that to the fintechs? Because today, if you look at it, the fintechs have already been working in various segments, right? And BNPL has been a biggest use case where most of the fintechs had come down. So there is obviously a demand. The question is, how do we supply it? So that's something that we want to kind of ensure that we continue with that journey and we keep customer in the middle.
Perfect. So I think we're pretty much running out of session. As you can see, a timer out there. Is it timer for closing out? So I'm sure there are a lot more questions out there. I would have loved to ask more questions, but I would rather leave it to the audience if they have any more questions. If audience has any questions, you can ask to any of our panelists out here, and then probably we can take it up. If not, then I have a couple of questions more. Yeah. You'll have to put it on the.
Someone will have to give him a
someone
mic.
Someone have to give the mic. You can come up and I think you have to give him a mic.
Hello.
Yep.
Thank you for that. A couple of questions. MDR on credit cards, I think, is something that I think it's a bit of a gray area right now. That's something that I would love to sort of understand how MDR would work on RuPay credit cards in the UPI ecosystem. Second is, I've once always heard that the number of frauds that get reported in the UPI ecosystem and the transaction failures that are fairly large. What's NPCI view on that? Minimizing transaction failures. How would that translate into the credit card ecosystem? So yeah, those would be two, three concerns that one would sort of.
I think
think
Denny,
about.
over to you. I think both the questions. I think you will be the one who can address this.
Right. So on the first question, obviously, the day this announcement came in, since that day, we have been having various industry interactions on the MDR piece, right? One thing is very clear with all the discussions that we have had with at least all the issuers and the major issuers that we have in the country. Everyone believes that the success of UPI system ecosystem is primarily because of the small merchants accepting the payments, and the small merchants is accepting a payment because it's a zero MDR, right? So one thing is very, very clear that we need to support them. We need to continue to support them. That particular segment cannot be disturbed for whatever product proposition that we are going to bring in. And everyone in the ecosystem unanimously kind of support it, right? What we are looking at is, and again, this is in discussion right now, so that's the reason why we will not be able to kind of come out. But obviously, as Ajay was saying, NPCI launches and kind of we then work along with the industry to take this thing at. But as you rightly said, there would be, and the panel also, every time you heard them talking about MDR. So there would be some business model built along it, because finally it is a credit product, right? And if a credit card is given to the customer, the issuer is always having that credit risk. Which leads to the second question on the fraud, right? So if you look at the frauds at UPI, okay, from a instant per overall transaction, this thing, UPI is one of the lowest fraud rates from a product perspective. That is primarily because the way UPI is built up, right? So you will always have to authenticate unless and until your mobile phone is compromised, unless and until your PIN is compromised, right? There cannot be a fraud transaction, and that's the beauty of UPI. So having said that, we are continuously working with the ecosystem to kind of, obviously, because I mean, in the payments world, you are aware how the fraud works, right? So the fraudsters are always one step ahead. So we are continuously kind of improving our system. On the failure rate, obviously, as NPCI, we have ensured that we scale up our infrastructure way before the demand actually kind of builds up, right? And it's always that same philosophy that we have worked up. Pramod mentioned how the banks needs to kind of also follow that same path. And today, most of the banks have taken care on the debit side, where they have scaled up their system for managing these volumes. I think the same exercise needs to happen.
The question was raised by Rohit also in terms of transaction failures.
Yeah.
I think that addresses that. Thanks. Anybody? Any more questions right now? Yeah, there's one more here. Yeah, two more, I think.
Yeah, hi. This is Nitin. I'm
Yeah,
here from IndiaMart. The basic question is, at IndiaMart we see refund is a very big problem for the guys whenever a credit transaction is done. It takes a duration of around 5 to 6 days to get money to them. Does UPI on credit card rail help in minimizing this, or are we looking at minimizing in some manner altogether?
Again, who would
Someone
address that?
else want to take it, or I can?
I think any of the guys can take it. Ajay, Bhargavi, or Denny.
Pramod knows UPI system, so he.
Yeah, actually, I think obviously the intent is always to, give the refund back in the minimum time possible. We already heard that, processes are being put in place similarly in line with what UPI is already implemented. I think, as I said, anything new will go through its journey of, getting the processes right. But as a baseline, when you have something which is like UPI, where there are established processes, and if they're followed for credit, you should see a marked improvement from what challenges you're facing today.
Some comfort to you. This entire product is going to run on UPI railroads. So the existing processes of refund continues to stay at us. So the challenge that you're facing as a credit product will not come.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, this is Shubham from OneCard. So in credit cards, what we usually see that the settlements usually happen on T+1. So how would in UPI credit model the settlements work? Because in UPI, merchants usually accept the settlement to be at this in real-time basis. Yeah.
So as I said, this is going to work on UPI railroads. So the settlement will also happen as per the existing UPI settlement cycle, which is 8 currently. It'll go up and as and when the requirement comes up. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, there are two more here. Can you just get the mic? I think there and here.
Hi, I'm Sumit Swaroop from Center for Digital Future, CDF. So your point on, of course, MDR is a very hot topic. And please allow me to, just ask one more question on that. That, having zero charges on UPI, and it does result in concentration of power, whether it's UPI being the single platform or it's the 2-3 large payment apps controlling, whether it's Google Pay or Phone Pay, etc., controlling everything. So it does, and there are multiple instances of companies not being allowed to charge, and then concentration of power happening, and it does result in lack of innovation in terms of the startup ecosystem or the other 60-70 applications not being very active on UPI. So is there any thought that you can have a tiered structure of pricing on UPI, maybe up to 2,000 rupees have zero charge, and then above 2,000 rupees? So some kind of a charge to enable a more innovative startup ecosystem on the whole UPI payments, because if we keep doing this, then the concentration of power will keep increasing in the coming years. Just a thought.
Ajay, you want to take that?
So, very pertinent question. While see some of this, so let me give you a little bit of story. So I've spent about 5 years in the Malaysia market, which is a mid-income market, where I used to be part of the card business there with Citi. And some of this stuff, which is more driven by institutions and regulators, right, to enable digitization in the economy, has to be driven in a certain manner. But yeah, all the players that you mentioned, right, innovation. In fact, even for payment apps, there's a huge amount of cost, right? To be able to settle UPI, high velocity transactions at the breakneck speed that they're growing, it requires a lot of infrastructure investments, right? So there's cost all around for all the players. And I think everybody involved is mindful of that, right? And which is why this has to be done thoughtfully, and which is where we said that this has to be done collectively. But at the same time, I think the single biggest thing, if you look at the way UPI has grown, right, a lot of P2P payments have grown. And why have P2M payments not grown as much, maybe at the same pace? Because of acceptance, right? So acceptance and ticket size and the kind of users, right? So a part of that problem gets solved because a lot of the large ticket consumption in India happens because it's driven by credit, right? If you look at concentration, talking about some bit of concentration, a lot of credit-driven consumption is getting concentrated in certain categories and certain, So some of them will get democratized, right, as things move. But yes, Bhargavi mentioned about, and that's so true. Issuers today who are settling and managing all the aspects we're talking about, normal transaction settlements, refunds, all of that requires cost, right? Fraud is a cost. So there has to be a certain, tiered structure to make this viable, right? But at the end of the day, we have to ensure that there is a merchant who's accepting, right? Who's a small business. And there obviously are consumers, right? So we have to kind of protect that ecosystem. But there are a lot of parties who are kind of building this. So I think, there is no right answer to this, but I think everybody's mindful, I'm sure. And, it's in the open. I'm sure the regulator is mindful of this. Everybody is mindful of this. So I think we'll have to take it as it goes. But we have to start on the right foot, and Denny spoke about, protecting certain segments, right? And I think that is right. So I think none of us are probably the right people to comment on this, but yeah.
I think. Thanks, Ajay. I think we already have a time up. We already had a question out there, but do we have time for one more question, or is the time up? One more? I think one more, if you can do that.
Okay, so my question is around integration of payment networks. You spoke that, initially it will be on RuPay card, but as we expand this to more networks, how easy or difficult one it is to integrate two networks, and secondly, how open will be, let's say, a MasterCard or a Visa to have this kind of an arrangement, because as we stand today, it's a duopoly market and they do have a strong hold on the customer. So how willing they will be to let go of some of that stronghold that they have.
For you itself.
So, sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name is Mohit. I'm from CLSA.
You're from?
CLSA.
Okay. I thought Master or Visa.
He's equities analyst.
Great. So, very good question. And this question was the first thing that we kind of asked ourselves when this announcement came in, right? So obviously, RBI has allowed this on RuPay first, okay? And RBI, whenever they come out with any new process or product or system, there's always a pilot phase, right? So we were very clear that this is just a kind of a technical launch where we want to kind of actually make it happen and then kind of grow together as the other issuers also kind of join the bandwagon. So this was the first question that we asked. How do we want to kind of create that process? Now, as NPCI, it would have been very easy to kind of create a process where the linking of a ICS card could have been much more tougher, right? But as I said, the core principle, the major design principle was customer is at the center. So if the customer is at the center, what we have done is the entire onboarding journey, the entire onboarding process, irrespective of which card the customer is, it becomes a very easy process. So today, if all the issuers are making live the RuPay linking, they just have to kind of turn on a Master or a Visa or a whatever, right? So that's the process that we have put in. The second thing was on the tokenization part, right? So the beauty of this entire process is it actually eliminates the need of a tokenization, because UPI is anyways, the VPA is a alias, so it's already tokenized, right? So you don't have to even get into a tokenization process. So that's the beauty of the process. As I said, we work with the design principle. We are not worried about what would be the RuPay share. We are not worried about what would be the overall this thing. We are worried about how this will benefit India in terms of both acceptance as well as on the issuance side. How do we grow the credit base?
Great, I think. Thanks. Would you like to add on something?
Call out is that there have been past products, right? ATM is a classic example, which is an NFS network where Visa and Master are universally accepted, and the regulator is ensured that there is innovation and integration is doable. So that's one example which is very, very successful and operates at a scale which is highly usable by the consumers. There was another attempt on BQR where all the networks came in, may not be successful, but there were frameworks in which multiple networks have participated. So I'm quite sure this is a practice that has been followed in true spirit, and I'm quite, when it happens, depends on how Visa and Master look at it, but it's definitely something that's happened in the past.
Yeah, thanks, Pramod. I think this has been an exciting session. I think it's only been time up right now. A lot of people are telling me time up. Thanks for being an engaging audience out here. We are looking forward to the CC linkage on UPI today evening. I think let's look forward to that and see how we can change the universe. I think Jai Hind. I think let's hope for the best for the country right now. Thank you very much.